A Monday morning. The sky was clear, but no one in the grand lobby of Santa Clara Hospital felt at ease, because among the dozens of patients, nurses and doctors, a black woman in a crisp, clean medical uniform stood motionless. Her name was Monica Brooks, 36 years old, head nurse of the emergency department. 10 years of service without a single complaint, not a single professional mistake, and yet now she was being fired, right in front of everyone. "You're terminated, Monica. Leave your coat and staff badge on the desk. Right now." The voice of Director Richard Hale rang out harshly. He didn't need a microphone. His voice was loud enough to make everyone turn. Even the patient moaning at the reception desk stopped stunned. Monica said nothing. Her eyes remained calm, but her hands, slightly tightening around the hem of her uniform, betrayed the emotions inside. Richard stepped forward, his face flushed, not from anger, but from the effort to assert dominance. "Severe violation of hospital policy. You acted without authorization, used hospital resources on a homeless man with no ID, no insurance." Each word sliced through Monica's dignity like a blade, but she still didn't respond. Not out of fear, but because she knew that if she reacted angrily, she would become precisely what they wanted to see: an angry black woman. Richard wasn't done. "People like you need to remember their place in this system. People like you." The words landed heavy as stone, toxic as poison, and far too familiar. Over the past 10 years, Monica had heard that phrase couched in various euphemisms. She'd been told she was a poor fit for the hospital's culture, or that she was competent but should be more reserved. They never said it outright. But today, in front of dozens of witnesses, Richard had torn off the mask the system wore. The night before, 11:07 p.m., the night shift in the ER was beginning to quiet down. The sound of ventilators, keyboards clicking, and rubber soles tapping the tiled floor blended into the familiar symphony of exhaustion. Monica Brooks was finishing up her shift. She opened her logbook, scribbling the final notes of the day. Then the automatic doors burst open. Cold air swept in, and with it a man. His clothes were in tatters, his shirt was soaked in blood, his face was caked with mud and scratches. He took 3 steps, then collapsed on the floor. "Please, help me." Just 3 words whispered like a final breath before he lost consciousness. At the front desk, Ashley Collins, the receptionist with perfectly curled blonde hair and long red-painted nails, glanced up from behind her phone screen. No insurance, no treatment, that's the rule. Not a single move, no call made, no doctor alerted. She turned back to take a picture of her nails to post on Instagram. But Monica didn't wait. She ran straight to the collapsed man, knelt beside him, checked his pulse. Weak, irregular heartbeat, rigid chest, likely a severe head trauma. "Page Dr. Rivera, Prep Trauma Room 3. Get a gurney now." She didn't look at Ashley, didn't ask for permission. Because the man was dying, Monica was a nurse. She didn't know how to stand and watch someone die. Ashley raised an eyebrow, picking up the phone. "Monica, you don't have the authority. He has no ID, no registration. You're breaking protocol." Monica turned back, eyes sharp as blades. "And if I do nothing, he'll die. What rule says you have the right to watch that happen?" A moment of silence. The on-call doctors exchanged glances, all aware that Monica was risking her entire career. But no one stopped her, because in their hearts they knew she was the only one in the building who still remembered the meaning of medical ethics. Now standing in the hospital lobby the next morning, Monica recalled that night as if it had passed just seconds ago. She removed her ID badge and placed it on the desk. She took off her white coat, her companion for a decade, and folded it slowly like a farewell ritual. Calvin Thomas, the black security guard who greeted her every morning, stepped forward. He didn't say a word, just bowed his head. Then she silently walked behind her like an honorary escort. Monica didn't look back. She walked through the revolving door like she had so many times before. Only this time, she was no longer called nurse. The glass revolving door slowly closed behind Monica. Outside, the morning sun cast a thin golden veil on the pavement, blurring everything that remained after the night's rain. She stood still for a few seconds, not out of regret, but because she felt empty. She had expected to cry or rage, or at least feel some sense of loss. But strangely inside her was a peculiar stillness, not resignation, but intuition, a vague sense that this wasn't over yet. She turned her head, looking across the street where a familiar figure had stood for the past 10 years. A homeless man with wild hair and beard, clutching an old backpack, usually lingers by the wall near the lamppost. Every morning, Monica saw him standing still, like part of the hospital's architecture. She never knew his name, but whenever she brought hot coffee to work, she'd buy an extra cup and place it on the mailbox nearby. For whoever needs it, she always said when people asked. Today, he wasn't there. The spot was empty. No trash can, no backpack, no figure. In his place stood another man. Grey suit, navy blue tie, a high-end phone pressed to his ear, his voice calm but firm, like someone coordinating a boardroom. The man stood exactly where the homeless man used to stand. His polished black leather shoes stepped on the very spot where the tin cup used to wait for spare change. And stranger still was the look in his eyes. He glanced at Monica. A brief look, but hauntingly deep. No pity, no curiosity, no surprise, as if he already knew who she was. Monica kept walking. She didn't speak, didn't ask, but a few steps later she froze as the image from last night flashed in her mind. The unconscious man, face bloodied, hands frail. In a fleeting moment under the dried mud. She remembered seeing a faint glint on his left wrist, like the reflection of fine metal. She'd thought it was just the ER lighting, but now she wasn't so sure. Could it be that the watch under that blood and mud wasn't cheap? Could it be that the man she saved was not homeless, but someone hiding his true identity? Monica didn't know, but she felt a current pulling her towards something she hadn't anticipated. That morning, Monica returned to her small apartment in Riverside, where faded low-rise buildings nestled along pothole-ridden roads far from the glossy, heartless world of Santa Clara Hospital. She opened the door, dropped her bag onto a chair, and just wanted to sit, to let the exhaustion seep into her like water soaking a dry cloth. On the kitchen counter, her phone buzzed for the 4th time. The 3 missed calls were from an unknown number, local area code, but no name was displayed. Monica hesitated a few seconds, then answered. A deep male voice, professional and firm, came through. "Dr. Monica Brooks, this is Jeremiah Carter, attorney at Reynolds & Associates. We need to speak with you urgently regarding the patient you attended to last night." Monica immediately tightened her grip on the phone. Her first instinct was defense. Her voice hoarse, she replied, "If this is about a lawsuit, I only did my duty. I'm not seeking any compensation." But Jeremiah's tone held no threat. There was something different, something inviting. "No, Monica. Quite the opposite. The man you saved. Your actions have had consequences beyond anything you imagined. We need to meet within the hour if possible." Monica didn't respond right away. She sat frozen. Consequences far beyond. The phrase echoed in her mind like a puzzle yet to be solved. An hour later, she arrived at a coffee shop in the financial district, where suits were the unspoken uniform. and everyone moved too fast to make eye contact. Monica entered her medical scrubs, no white coat, and felt like a blot of ink on a pristine white canvas. In the far corner, a black man in a tailored suit raised his hand with a polite wave. No name tag, no air of superiority. But his eyes reflected experience and a sense that he understood more than anyone else. "I'm Jeremiah," he said, pulling out a chair for her. Then, without pleasantries, he slid a tablet across the table to Monica. The screen displayed a face familiar yet altered. Clean, groomed, grey suit, neatly knotted tie. But it was him. The man she'd saved the night before when he collapsed, his face obscured by blood and mud. Monica's eyes widened. "That's impossible." Jeremiah smiled softly, the kind of smile that carries heavy secrets. "That's Elijah Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Holdings, the largest private healthcare conglomerate in the United States." Each word landed like a stone. Monica nearly dropped her coffee. She repeated the name as if forcing herself to believe the absurdity of it. "Elijah Whitmore." Jeremiah nodded. "He has a habit of hiking alone at the end of each month. No bodyguards, no announcements. Says it clears his mind. Yesterday he suffered a serious accident, and somehow he made it to Santa Clara." Monica said nothing. She leaned back in her chair, her mind spinning like a cyclone. The man she saved wasn't a vagrant, nor was he an outsider. He was one of the most powerful figures in the healthcare industry. And this could change everything. That night, Monica sat in her small apartment, her phone flashing blue for the 5th time in an hour. It wasn't a call from the hospital, not an apology, not a second chance. It was a message from Calvin Thomas, the only security guard who had ever looked at her with respect. "I have something you need to see. Meet me in the old parking garage, 11 p.m. Monica didn't reply. She grabbed her coat and walked out, her heartbeat steady, but her gaze sharper than ever. Calvin was already there when she arrived, holding something small wrapped in a handkerchief. "I can't stay silent anymore," Calvin said, his voice trembling like a man betraying someone, or perhaps betraying an old version of himself. "You should know. The security camera in the main lobby where you were fired doesn't just record video. It captures audio too." Monica paused. "You mean?" Calvin nodded. "I extracted the audio not through the system. No one knows. And I've listened to it, over and over, and I haven't been able to sleep since." He handed her the USB. Monica took it, and that very night with Jeremiah Carter, they played the file. Richard Hale's voice came through sharp and unmistakable, like a wound reopened. "That black bitch thinks she's someone she should be grateful to work here. I've been waiting for that excuse. She saved a nameless bum. Perfect." Monica didn't blink. Jeremiah closed his eyes. Richard's voice wasn't just prejudiced. It was a confession, a proud, toxic declaration. "And that Dr. Rivera guy, let's see if he's culturally compatible. If you don't get the game, you're out." Jeremiah sat up straight. He spoke slowly, each word a step in strategy. "This is the first blow, but we'll need more to bring the whole system down." Still recovering in a high-end private hospital, Elijah continued directing operations through daily video calls. He wasn't angry. He was cold, precise like a machine, well acquainted with the filth of the industry. "I want every denied patient case in the last 5 years reviewed. Predominantly Black and Latino patients. If there's a crack, we'll pry it open like lifting a sewer lid in a banquet hall." And so they began. Finance department data showed that 89% of uninsured patients denied care were people of color. Donation records revealed each time the hospital's budget was restructured. A large sum was funneled into the campaign fund of Mayor Reeves' Richard Hale's cousin. Internal emails from Ashley Collins showed that she had been instructed to delete patient files if they had low-income addresses or lacked gold-tier insurance. Each piece of evidence was a gash in Santa Clara's polished mask, and for the first time in years, Monica felt at peace. Not because revenge was near, but because the truth now had allies. That night, on her personal Facebook page, Ashley posted a smug status: "Some people need to understand rules exist for a reason. Break them and you're out. Had justice served." 47 likes, most of the senior hospital managers. But minutes later, Monica received a private message from Calvin. "You should see the internal video footage. There's even a part where he calls you social garbage. Audio is clear. I'm sending the file." Monica opened her laptop. Her eyes no longer wept. They were sharp as glass. She was no longer Monica, the humble nurse who once bowed before a panel. Now she was a witness, living proof, and the spark that would burn down a rotting empire. Metropolitan Hotel, Grand Hall, the venue where every titan of the medical world dreams of stepping onto the stage at least once in their lifetime. Chandeliers glittered overhead. A live string ensemble played softly over classical harmonies. Below, velvet-covered seats surrounded the hall. Fine champagne was poured into crystal flutes. Canapes floated past on silver trays as though the entire world was bowing before the healthcare hero, Richard Hale. He would receive the Healthcare Executive of the Year award for the 4th year tonight. Local media had arrived early. A camera crew was already set up to live stream his speech onto a massive screen behind the stage. Richard stepped onto the podium in a sleek black tuxedo, his smug smile broadcasting the illusion that medical history was calling his name. He raised his glass of champagne, eyes sweeping over the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I'm proud to announce that Santa Clara Hospital has reached its highest profit margin since its founding. We've proven that high-quality healthcare and profitability can go hand in hand." The audience applauded. But then, suddenly the screen behind him flickered. No one on the technical team understood what was happening. The Santa Clara logo disappeared, the stage lights dimmed, and a video began to play that was not included in the program. It was surveillance footage from the hospital lobby when Monica was fired. Richard's voice rang out, not tonight's speech, but the audio Calvin had extracted: "That black woman needs to learn her place. I've been waiting for an excuse to get rid of her. She saved some worthless bum. Perfect. A flawless excuse." The entire hall went silent. The screen changed. Financial department charts appeared. Bold red text: percentage of denied patients. 89% were people of color or Latino. Then an internal email from Ashley Collins: "Delete patient records if they don't have Tier A insurance, especially the zip code area 09. Don't let those people tank the hospital's ratings." The hall buzzed with murmurs. A few board members lowered their glasses. Some guests tried to determine if this was real or some elaborate prank. But then came the final voice, calm, commanding each word, cutting through the noise: "I'm Elijah Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Holdings. On the 15th of this month, I was denied treatment at Santa Clara Hospital after a serious accident. No insurance, no ID, they didn't care who was dying. But one person, Dr. Monica Brooks, didn't ask how much money I had. She just saw I was dying and saved me." The room exploded in gasps, then fell dead quiet as figures in black suits entered from every doorway. Federal agents, Agent Miles Jackson, tall and stoic, appeared in the center aisle. flashed his badge and cuffed Richard Hale in front of every news camera live streaming the event. "Richard Hale, you are under arrest for fraud, systemic discrimination and embezzlement of public healthcare funds. You have the right to remain silent." Richard struggled, disbelief flashing across his face. A figure stepped out from the seats at the back of the hall. Monica Brooks. She wasn't wearing scrubs. She wore a navy blue suit and stood tall, her gaze void of hatred, only resolved. "You," Richard hissed as he was dragged away. "You set me up." Monica stepped forward, stopping just close enough to see every twitch in the corner of his mouth. "No, Mr. Hale. You built this system. I just turned on the light so everyone could finally see it." From all the auxiliary screens, more information began to pour in. The name of Mayor Daniel Reeves, Richard's cousin, appeared tied to shady campaign donations. Reporters surged toward the exits, microphones and cameras pointed like weapons. Because tonight wasn't just the fall of one man. It was the collapse of an empire hiding behind white coats. At that moment, Santa Clara was no longer just a hospital. It had become a symbol of a system in desperate need of reform. Once discarded like an afterthought, Monica became the spark behind decades' most significant healthcare reckoning. As Richard Hale was led out, the click of his polished dress shoes echoed coldly against the marble floor. But this time, there was no applause. No one rose to see him off. Only disgusted stares, silence, and the glow of live streams capturing the final frame of a fallen dynasty. Behind him, where a tribute video was meant to play, now ran a string of incriminating evidence. The screen stayed lit, but this time it showed something different. No more profit graphs, no more market share maps. Only the faces of patients who had been denied treatment were shown. People who once stood helpless in hallways because they didn't have the right kind of card. And then, the spotlight turned. Back to the person who should have taken the stage from the beginning, Monica Brooks. She stood where Richard had just left, not with arrogance, but upright, composed. Her gaze fixed straight into the camera, and her voice, quiet yet unwavering, silenced the room. "I'm not here for revenge," she began. "I'm here to say what should have been said long ago." No one moved. No cutlery clinked. Every eye was on the woman once cast out like a liability, now standing at the very peak, as the voice of conscience for an entire profession. In 10 years at Santa Clara, I saw things no medical textbook ever taught. I saw people die because they didn't have the right credit card. I saw my most capable colleagues get fired because of the color of their skin, because of their accent, because they came from the wrong neighborhood. Her voice didn't crack, but her eyes sparkled not with tears but with courage. "Last week, I was fired for saving a man without insurance. But today I know I didn't save a nameless patient. I saved my faith in medicine, in humanity, in justice." The hall erupted, not with raucous applause, but with a heavy, respectful silence. The kind of silence that follows witnessing something extraordinary. From the audience, Dr. Miguel Rivera rose. His eyes were red, his hands slightly trembling as he took the microphone. But he spoke. "I was part of this system, and I was silent." He looked around, not seeking rescue from his confession. "I saw Monica pushed aside. I saw patients denied, and I chose to lower my head." But no more. He turned toward Monica, "Dr. Brooks, you are the example of the healer we should have all strived to be." The first clap came from a young female doctor, then the second, then a third, until the entire hall stood, not to applaud a title, but to honor integrity. Just hours after Monica stepped down from the gala podium, the event video was uploaded to the official channel of the National Health Organization. But what no one expected was how fast it would spread. Within 6 hours, the video had over 5 million views. Hashtags #Justice for Monica and #Brooks Model shot to the top of national trends. Hundreds of stories began pouring in, from patients whom Santa Clara had once turned away to doctors who had resigned under the pressure of sorting patients by income, to interns dismissed for saying everyone deserves to live. On Twitter, a 20-year-old girl wrote that her mother, who had been denied cancer treatment for lack of insurance, had died in Santa Clara's waiting room the previous year. "I don't know who was responsible for my mum's death," she wrote, "but tonight, I know someone finally spoke for her." The Council for Equitable Healthcare Oversight at the White House called an emergency meeting. A formal federal investigation was launched. The next day, Monica Brooks's name appeared on 6 major morning news broadcasts. On CNN, a journalist ended the segment with a line that shook the nation. She was once labeled a policy violator. Today, she's considered the architect of the first human-centered healthcare revolution of the 21st century. But it wasn't just the media that changed. Those who once stood on the wrong side began to falter. Ashley Collins, the receptionist who mocked Monica and wrote discriminatory emails, was fired from Santa Clara the day after Richard's arrest. A screenshot of her old status "rules are rules" had justice served was dug up and became a viral symbol of hypocrisy. She applied for jobs at several places but was turned down for being culturally incompatible. And every time she turned on the TV, Monica's face appeared, not as a victim, but as the architect of a new world. Elsewhere, Richard Hale, dressed in grey prison fatigues, was transferred to a federal detention center far from the city. 15 years in prison for 3 charges: systemic discrimination, embezzlement of public funds, and abuse of power in a healthcare organization. In the visitation room, he received an envelope, sent from Santa Clara, no longer under its old name, but now Monica Brooks Health Center. Inside was a photo of the hospital's new sign. Beneath it, a simple note: "We cleaned house. Thank you for leaving the space." And as for Monica, she didn't return to nursing. She was appointed chief medical director of the new statewide nonprofit healthcare system, overseeing the state's first community-based, patient-centered model. She began rehiring those cast out of Santa Clara for not being culturally appropriate. Danielle Perez, the bilingual nurse Ashley had fired for speaking Spanish to a patient, was now coordinating the entire community care network. Calvin Thomas, the guard who had once escorted Monica out of the hospital, was now head of security with full operational authority. Once silent, Rivera was given full authority to reform the ER department. With one note from Monica: "This time, you're not allowed to stay silent." But most importantly, Monica held no hatred. She didn't want her enemies crushed beneath her feet. She wanted to turn the wreckage they left behind into a foundation for something better. 6 months after Santa Clara was renamed Monica Brooks Health Center, the inauguration of the new building was held on a sunny autumn morning. Gone were the flashy gold-plated signs. Instead, a simple sign greeted visitors at the gate: "Care without bias. Treatment without conditions." On the main stage, Monica stepped out in a custom uniform, a white blouse with a soft blue sheen, the hospital name embroidered at the collar in silver thread. Beside her stood Elijah Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Holdings. The man who once collapsed on the hospital floor, now standing not as a savior, but as someone who deeply understood the value of timely compassion. Monica looked around the auditorium. filled with doctors, medical students, and patients who had once been denied care, now honored guests. I once thought getting fired was the end. She began, her voice steady and resonant like a cello's low note. But I realized, sometimes the universe has to push you out of the wrong place, to put you exactly where you're meant to be. The room was silent. No phones vibrated, no chairs were shifted, only hearts are listening. Monica continued, I'm not here to relive pain. I'm here to plant a seed of hope. And today, I have an announcement. The screen behind her lit up. Words appeared one beat at a time, like a heartbeat. The Brooks Initiative. Full scholarships for Black and Latino medical students. Applause broke out, but quickly quieted as Monica raised her hand gently, signaling she wasn't done. No one, and I repeat, should ever be denied the right to save lives. Because of where they were born, the color of their skin, or the language they used to speak to patients. She paused, her eyes locking onto the front row of medical students. And if someday one of you is forced to choose between a soulless rule and a dying human being, I hope you choose as I did, and I hope you'll never be punished for it. As Monica stepped back, Elijah stepped forward to the microphone. He needed no introduction, but still he bowed before her, as if handing the stage back to its rightful owner. Monica didn't just save my life, she saved the soul of this profession. And so on behalf of Whitmore Holdings, I'm announcing a $100 million fund to expand the Monica Brooks Health Center model to 5 more cities within the next 2 years. This time, the applause didn't stop. One by one, the hall stood until the entire room erupted in thunderous applause. Not for money, but for the spirit Monica embodied, doing the right thing even when it costs you everything. Mrs. Brooks. Monica's mother quietly wiped her tears in the front row. She had once scrubbed floors at the original Santa Clara, once skipped meals so her daughter could study medicine. Now she watched her child not just a successful doctor. However, women are changing how an entire country defines fair healthcare. That evening, Monica's speech was rebroadcast across dozens of TV networks. Top medical schools began revising their ethics curriculum, using the Brooks model as a new standard. A bleak morning at the federal penitentiary, nearly 300 kilometers from the city. Richard Hale, once the arrogant director of Santa Clara, was now nothing more than inmate 7489B, dressed in a faded gray jumpsuit, rubber gloves on his hands, scrubbing a toilet with a chipped brush. His days now began with the stench of bleach, the clanking of iron locks, and the piercing flicker of fluorescent lights. But what drained him the most wasn't the work, but the silence. No letters, no visitors, no wife, no children, no friends, no one to defend him. Within a week of his arrest, his wife had filed for divorce. Once the pride of every gala appearance, his 2 children had legally changed their surnames, severing ties with the man entangled in America's most significant healthcare scandal. Mayor Daniel Reeves, his once powerful cousin, had quietly resigned and vanished from the media as federal investigations closed in. The name Hale, once a prestigious symbol in the medical field, was now cited in classrooms as a textbook example of systemic corruption and the abuse of power. One afternoon, Richard was called into the visitation room. The guard said nothing, just nodded and tossed him an envelope. Inside was a sturdy invitation card with silver-embossed text against a clean white background, hospital renaming ceremony. Monica Brooks Health Center. He opened it. A photograph slipped out. The new building glowed under the sun, with a banner draped across its front, care without condition, dignity without bargain. Across the glass partition sat Calvin Thomas, the former security guard who had escorted Monica out of the hospital that fateful day. Calvin wasn't angry, he wasn't triumphant, he offered a polite smile. "She asked me to give this to you, in person." Richard squinted at the invitation, then back at Calvin. "She still remembers me," Calvin nodded, eyes reflecting something not quite pity, more like regret for a man who had wasted his chance to be decent. "She's not after revenge, Mr. Hale. She just wanted you to know there's still room for compassion in that hospital. It just doesn't need you to run it anymore." Richard didn't respond. He quietly folded the invitation and looked down at his calloused hands hardened by disinfectant. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure who he was without a title power or followers. At that very moment, back at the hospital auditorium, hundreds had gathered for the renaming ceremony. Monica didn't take center stage. She stood quietly on the side, holding her mother's hand, yielding the spotlight to those once pushed aside nurses who had been fired, students who were once denied scholarships, doctors who had been forgotten simply for not being white enough. At the back of the hall, LED screens displayed the message, "From a corridor once stained by discrimination, today we build a hallway that leads to hope." 1 year after Monica Brooks was fired from Santa Clara, she returned, not in a nurse's uniform, but in a navy blue suit bearing a special medical emblem awarded by the U.S. Department of Health, an honor never before granted to anyone outside elected office. Before a complete assembly of hospital directors, medical school deans, and federal lawmakers at the National Federation of Healthcare, Monica stepped up to the podium just as she had once stepped through the hospital's revolving doors, with steady resolve and eyes that had never bowed to injustice. "I used to be a nurse in a hallway where saving lives was measured against an insurance chart. I was called unfit, not for incompetence, but for refusing to lower my head to a system that valued profit over people. I was dragged out of the place I called family for 10 years because I chose to do what was right." She lifted her head, high eyes sweeping across a hall that held its breath. "But today I stand here not to tell a story of pain, but to declare that we can rebuild from what was broken. And we can do better." Behind her, a map of the US lit up on the screen. Green dots began to appear. 5 cities marked the launch of Monica Brooks Health Center. A female voice narrated from New York to Phoenix, Atlanta to Chicago, a model of fair and humane care, regardless of race, language, or income, will now become the future standard. In the press conference afterward, Elijah Whitmore announced a second round of funding, $300 million, not just for hospital construction, but also to fund full scholarships for Black, Indigenous, and immigrant medical students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Establish the Monica Brooks Institute for Medical Ethics, where all new healthcare workers will learn one principle: how to care for humans, not just cases. Create a nationwide tech platform to share medical data between free clinics, ensuring equal treatment for all wherever they are. Monica's story is now part of the curriculum at over 120 medical schools across the US. A novel based on her life became a New York Times bestseller. Netflix acquired the rights to a film adaptation, but for Monica, the only thing she kept, it was an old photograph. She sat in the tiny kitchen of her childhood home, holding a mug of coffee, staring at the picture taken the first day she wore her white coat at Santa Clara. Her face in the photo was younger, but the eyes, those eyes hadn't changed, steady, fearless, unashamed. In a year-end TV interview, the host asked, "If you could go back to that day, knowing you'd lose your job, be humiliated, forced out of the place you gave 10 years of your life to, would you still save that man?" Monica smiled gently, calmly. "I didn't lose anything. I was just pushed out of a dark room, into a place where the light was stronger." That quote became iconic. It was embroidered on graduation white coats, painted on the walls of medical schools. And when a reporter asked Monica how she defined victory, she answered, "I don't need anyone to be buried beneath me so I can stand tall. I want to build a place where those who were once forgotten can walk in and know they deserve to live." Somewhere else, in a quiet prison cell, Richard Hale sat watching the broadcast on a ceiling-mounted TV. He looked visibly older. When the anchor spoke Monica Brooks's name, he closed his eyes, not in guilt, but with a painful clarity that came too late. Cruelty can silence a voice, but kindness, if unwavering, can make the world listen. And just like that, from the simple act of a black nurse kneeling beside a dying stranger, asking no insurance, no ID, began a revolution in how we care for one another. Because sometimes to change the entire system, you only need the courage to save the one person the world has turned its back on.